All right, let us begin. Clive, can you start us off? I'm just going to call your name from the top. So we're just going to do a quick intro. Just a quick introduce yourself, say where you're coming from, why you're interested. Keep it brief, though, if you don't mind, because we've got a lot to cover. Go ahead, Clive. Yep.
I've Garrity from Dublin. Always been interested in AE. I found a fascinating man and was delighted to see Patrick um, uh, starting a resurgence of interest in AE. And he had been uh, awfully ignored in Ireland for many, many years. So well done, Patrick.
Great to see you, Clive. Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
So I'm Jim Conway I would be the chairman of the A.E. Russell Society in Lurgan, and maybe I was just thinking back there. I've been a member of the community outreach group for it's our 30th anniversary, and so Lurgan's the most divided town in Ireland, or regarded as such. And I've been working to try and break down those barriers, and it's almost as if I dreamt up A.E. Russell as the hero of the man, as the last talk was, but the hero to bring our town together. So um, it's going back a few years, but we started the society to try and we started finding out about a lot about AE and how great this man was, and we started a campaign and a festival every year in Lurgan to try and bring his memory back to the people that had long forgotten him. So that's me.
Thanks, Jim, and great work you've been doing. Go ahead, Raymond.
Raymond O'Kieran coming live from Armagh City.
Okay, thank you, Raymond. Joan.
Navarre. I'm calling in from Wisconsin, and I am the International Vice Chair of the AE George Russell Society.
Very good, and gave a great talk on Henry Wallace at our summer school in July. Go ahead, Mary.
Hi, Mary McCormick. I'm in Bloomington, Minnesota, a suburb of Minneapolis, and I'm the secretary of the AE Society.
Fabulous Bloomington, yes. Cheryl, if you don't mind. You have to turn on your volume, Cheryl.
There we go. All right. Hi, I'm Cheryl Eckel calling in from Montana, and I'm a big AE fan, and I love reconnecting with you folks whenever I can.
Thank you, Cheryl. It looks fantastic. I hope no bear wanders by, but it looks fabulous. Go ahead, Marianne.
Hi everyone, I'm Marianne McGee and I'm joining you from Newry today in Northern Ireland. So it's great to see you all again. I too love reconnecting with you all as much as I can.
Great to see you, Marianne. And Marianne does fantastic work with video production and all the other stuff with the website. So thank you, Marianne. Next there, please, Maggie.
Hello, everybody. I'm Maggie Breslin. I'm one of three trustees from the George Moore Association, and I'm a newbie here, obviously. Nice to see such a great turnout, and looking forward to this evening. Hopefully, we'll explore connections between our two Georges and see where it takes us.
Yes, and Maggie, as I've mentioned in an email to you, we absolutely love the George Moore Association and Society and want to work with you guys.
That's
And
great.
obviously, great friendship between the two Georges.
Absolutely.
Next there, please, Patrick.
Yep. Hi, everyone. I'm zooming in from Cabra in Dublin. And I'm a big fan of AE as well via cooperation. So lovely to be with everyone here.
Very good. Thank you, Patrick. Next there, please, Mary McKenna.
Hello, I'm in Dún Laoghaire, Dublin, and I have a great interest. I really enjoyed the last two and the stuff you've posted online that you recorded over the last couple of years. And I've just read the biography of AE too, so very, very, very interesting. Thank you.
Yep, and your namesake, Stephen MacKenna, will be a source of discussion today.
Yeah, and I have an interest in Plato and Plotinus too, and Platonism for many years.
Yes, very good. Yeah, thank you. So just forgive me, we're just moving a little fast so we have time for discussion later on. Go ahead, Marty from Belfast. Go ahead, Marty. Yep.
Hi everyone, my name's Marty. I'm a poet from Belfast. I just got wind of this through the John Hewitt Society, and I'm new to AE and I look forward to learning. Thank you.
Thank you, Marty. Welcome. And we are partnering with the John Hewitt Society going forward, certainly with our probably our spring school and summer school. More or not on that. Hugh, if you're there.
Yes. Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Hugh.
Great. Yet another privilege to be attending. I've gone all fuzzy. Yes, yet another privilege to be attending these great salons. When I think of the salons of the past and the great people who attended them, I hope in a few hundred years they'll be looking back on us and say what great people we were. But no, I'm here from Dublin. I'm actually one of these amazing people who is a founder member of the AE George Russell Society. I'm rather proud of that fact. But also, I thought I had enough problems in life trying to struggle with AE. And now, Patrick, you throw Plotinus on my desk. How dare you?
Yes, we're only getting started. You're going to need a bigger desk, Hugh.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hugh. Great to see you. You always make great contributions in the summer school. Yeah, Andy, go ahead.
Andy from Belfast. Just looking forward to learn a bit more today. Thanks.
Okay, very good. All right, so what I'm going to do, guys, is everything goes to plan. Give me a second here. I'm going to share a little PowerPoint with you.
Don't forget Rita.
Oh, Rita. Sorry, Rita.
That's all right.
My enthusiasm. Rita, go ahead. How can I forget Rita? Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Rita Davern from St. Paul, Minnesota, US, and I'm delighted to be with all of you. And in particular, I'm a big fan of the Armagh contingent of this group who I've gotten to know over years. Glad to be here.
Thank you, Rita. And Rita has contributed many things to the spring school, particularly, and hopefully will join us in the summer school in the future. Is that everybody? Sorry, I don't want to be very un-Plotinian of me to leave anybody out. Okay, so let's jump into, if everything works out for me here, I'm going to share the screen. Give me a sec. Okay, can you guys see that? No.
No, not yet.
Okay, hang on, wait a sec. Okay, so I can see it. Can you see that now?
Yes.
Yep.
Oh, okay, so we'll take it from the beginning. Okay, you can see that now, right? Okay, so I'm going to take us on a journey for about, let's see, might be 15 to 20 minutes. So we're going to talk about, I'm going to do this little talk as if you know nothing about AE and as if you know a little bit about AE as well. So you please don't be overwhelmed. So as part of the education program, this is our third salon. So this is a little bit more of a talk initially, then we'll do discussion in about 20, 25 minutes. So we're looking at beautiful souls. So the first figure is George A.E. Russell, 1867, 1935. Then his friend, the third figure there with the mustache, is Stephen MacKenna. I'm going to talk about Russell and MacKenna. And then the intermediary figure is Plotinus. Now, Plotinus is interesting. He's born in Egypt. He's a Greek speaker. He's the 3rd century. So for him, the ancient Greek philosophers were truly ancient. Plato was born almost 600 years before Plotinus. So he studies in Alexandria, and he's going to synthesize and create an integrated view of Plato, Aristotle, and the Stoics. So it's kind of a grand unified theory, what's known as Neoplatonism. Essentially, he is a Platonist. His great sage and master is Plato. Okay, but first we're going to look a little bit at Plotinus. It's 1:12 p.m. Oh, sorry. So how can we sum up Plotinus's entire philosophy? This is it in one line, one sentence. So Porphyry, who is his biographer and his student and his editor, met Plotinus right as Plotinus was dying, and this is the maxim, the living legacy of his philosophy. One sentence: strive to bring back the God in yourselves to the divine in the universe. And that's right at the end of Plotinus's life. So without getting too much into the terminology, it's quite a simple philosophy, right? So this striving involves our soul participating in the beautiful intelligibility of the divine mind. This is an idea from Plato. Remember, the philosopher Plotinus is a Platonist. Plato's essential philosophy is that the eternal, immaterial, spiritual forms are more real than the material world. So if you have a table, it participates in the intelligible form of an eternal archetype of a table, right? In a spiritual realm beyond the material world, right? So this intelligibility is what Plotinus calls the intellectual principle, right? And this takes us on an ascent towards an ecstatic union with the transcendent one, okay? So just three terms there: soul, divine mind, and one. So putting this very simply, building on Plato, right? Plotinus asserts that the one, which is the ineffable, transcendent, mysterious Godhead, the source of all of intelligibility in the universe, has emanations that flow from it. The one is ineffable. It is indescribable. But from it, all intelligibility emanates or flows, right? And so the one, I mean, it's a really beautiful philosophy. So there's an idea of the one, and out of the emanation of the one comes the divine mind, which contains all of the forms, archetypes of beauty, justice, goodness. And then that flows down to the soul, right? And so there's a soul of the world, and there's the individual soul that we have, right? And so as we engage in creative thought as poets, or creative thought as an architect, or creative thought as a teacher, creative thought as a philosopher, we are engaging our soul in the beautiful intelligibility that has flowed down through the divine mind from the one, right? And that awakens through our soul our inner divine quality, which can allow us then to ascend, particularly in the contemplation of beauty, as in today's reading, that can allow us to ascend into an ecstatic union with the one, which defies all words and description, but which is the total source of all things. Later Christian Platonists following Plotinus will, of course, identify the one with God, right? And Stephen MacKenna's translation at times uses God for the one, okay? So the one, there's various images of the one in the Plotinus's Enneads, simple images to understand. One is like the sun, so like the way the light of the sun is everywhere, but you don't see the light, you don't see the source of the light. Similarly, the source of intelligibility is the one, and it's everywhere. Or it can be seen like as chorus, the way a choir is singing in harmony. The intelligibility allowing the choir to sing in harmony is the one, mediating through the musical score of the divine mind. Or it's seen as a center of a circle, right? And actually, A.E. says there is a center within us through which all the threads of the universe are drawn, and that is very similar to the Plotinian idea. Okay, so the one is the ineffable source of all being. It's transcendent, okay? Okay, let's look then at A.E. very quickly. So the four phases of A.E.'s creative life. So A.E. is a natural mystic, right? Later he becomes an economist, an editor, a philosopher, a poet, an artist, a sage, the conscience of the nation. So very quickly, the four phases of his career: mystical visions as an adolescent. Then he starts studying theosophy. He starts weaving the occult revival into the Irish literary revival in poetry, fiction, and prose. That's the first section, up until his 20s. And then he gets a job working with Sir Horace Plunkett's Irish Agricultural Organization Society. He gets married, has a family, he becomes a mentor to poets and dramatists. And also becomes a dramatist and becomes an expounder of esotericism and a mythographer of the Irish mythological god folk, the Tuatha Dé Danann. And then 1905 to 1920, he becomes an editor, mentor, thought leader, and also a more careful student of Plotinus after 1917. And then the last phase is the glorious phase of AE, is when he's the editor, thought leader, conscience of the nation, novelist, poet, sage, universal pundit, international speaker, and advocate for a more cosmopolitan and sophisticated Ireland as editor of the Irish Statesman. Okay, so let me just go through those phases just briefly. So the first phase then is theosophy. So theosophy is another grand unified theory from the 19th century, founded in New York in 1875 by Madame Helena Petrovna Blavatsky. This is what Plato is to Plotinus, Blavatsky is to AE. And so Blavatsky is a very wide synthesizer of Eastern wisdom and Western esotericism with some Platonic and Neoplatonic ideas, right? And AE would have been reading Plato since he was an adolescent student of mysticism. So he also is, while he studies Plotinus more carefully after 1917, he would have been studying works of Plato all the way through his life. So in 1886, just briefly, the Theosophical Lodge is founded by Charles Johnson. It allows for writers in the Irish literary Renaissance to have a mythos of a worldwide spirituality. John Eglinton, in his AE memoir from 1937, says, probably there has never been in any country a period of literary activity which has not been preceded or accompanied by some stimulation of the religious interest. Anyone in search of this in Ireland will find it in the ferment caused in the minds of a group of young men in the early activities of the Theosophical movement in Dublin. Yeats famously is very active in this initially, and also AE, and they're both friends with Charles Johnson, okay? So just in terms of AE's chronology, just to break it down a little bit more briefly, in 1888, he adopts the pseudonym AE. He meets Blavatsky in London, and this is when she publishes her magnum opus, The Secret Doctrine, which he studies and has study groups discuss for many, many decades. 1888 or 1889, he joins the Theosophical Lodge officially. 1890, he starts working at Pym Brothers on South Great Georgia Street. And actually, you can still see the sign for Pym Brothers when you walk down that street in Dublin. 1891 to 97, he's in the Household in Upper Ely Place, which still has all of his amazing murals in their walls. 1891, Blavatsky dies. 1895, Charles Weeks. Just to publish AE's work, he sets up a publishing house, in the first volume, and still one of the best volumes, Homeward Songs, by the way, is published. And then AE is kind of much more officially part of the Irish literary Renaissance, 1895 to 1896. He starts to write Cuchulainn tales, which are really, really interesting. And he starts to fuse Irish mythology with theosophy to create a mystical nationalism. He has a vision of an avatar that he communicates to Yeats in 1896. 1897, his second collection of poetry is much more informed by Irish themes, okay? This is the statue of AE in Merrion Square. 1898, he marries Violet North. He had met her in the Ely Place household. 1902, he joins the Irish Dramatic Society. But again, there's the inevitable clash with the dictatorial Yeats. He leaves it, but his play Deirdre is performed at that time. 1904, he has an exhibition with Count and Countess Markievicz. There was a great revival of interest in Count Markievicz in Dublin last summer, which had some of Markiewicz's portraits of AE. It was very, very good at Dublin Castle. 1904, Dublin Lodge Theosophical Society is revived. From 1905 to 1923, he edits Irish Homestead. 1923 to 1930, he edits the Irish Statesman. And then he does 4 visits altogether to America. 1928, he visits twice. 29, he gets a degree from Trinity, okay? And here we can see beauty in one of his paintings. 1930, his third lecture tour of America is to raise money for Mrs. Russell's medical fees, and then she dies in 1932. 1934, 1935, he has this major lecture, which would have made him a much more internationally known figure, only he had a diagnosis of cancer and had to cut it short and return to Bournemouth in England. In January of that 1935 lecture tour, he did have lunch at the White House with Franklin Delano Roosevelt. So just to fill that in quickly. Okay, so let's talk about the other sage figure, little known. And one of the great things about investigating AE is all of these little known figures who deserve way, way more attention that emerge. And this figure, who is a sage in his own right, and a fascinating figure, is Stephen MacKenna, who is the translator of Plotinus and was a friend of AE in Dublin. So I really want to contextualize MacKenna within the environment of the Irish literary Renaissance. So MacKenna was born of Irish parents in 1872 in Liverpool. In 1896 in Paris as a journalist, he met and befriended John Millington Synge. And how I heard of MacKenna has always been in any kind of research I did on Synge. He was always sort of mentioned, but he was a lifelong friend of Synge. Synge is also buried in Mount Jerome alongside, close to where A.E. Russell resides. And he also met Maud Gonne and John O'Leary. John O'Leary is back and forth to Paris still. I mean, he'd come back to Dublin in the 1880s. And they all stayed in this one hotel, the Hotel Cornille. It was the place later where James Joyce would meet Synge. It's kind of interesting. 1897, I used the word he fought, but MacKenna wasn't really a fighter. He volunteered, to be accurate, but he volunteered for the Greeks against Turkey, which he memorably summed up as like waiting for a train in Mullingar. I hope nobody's from Mullingar, but it deepened his knowledge of spoken Greek. Okay, so he's getting involved, right? What's interesting is what he does with his career. So he becomes the European correspondent of Joseph Pulitzer's New York World, and he goes to Russia, and he even interviews Tolstoy. That's a portrait of Tolstoy. So he had met other sages, but in Russia is when he came across a copy of Plotinus, one of the last great philosophers of antiquity before Christian philosophy takes off with St. Augustine. And so he starts from 1905 becoming intrigued with Plotinus. So he resigns from international journalism, returns to Dublin, and starts to work for the Freeman's Journal, which is the constitutional nationalist newspaper. He volunteers with the Gaelic League. He is a devotee. Raymond, you'll be interested in this. He is a devotee to the Irish language and learns the Irish language pretty well and becomes involved with the Irish literary Renaissance. His life work began in earnest with the first publication of a short selection on beauty from the first Ennead. And again, the Enneads means the nines. These are 6 books of 9 essays, which elucidate Neoplatonism. So from 1908 to 1923, he kind of goes back to England in the middle, about 1940 and 1950, and then comes back to Ireland. His wife became an intellect. He and his wife hosted a salon, which became an intellectual center in Dublin, a brilliant conversation held weekly on Saturdays. Okay. So I just want to talk about the conversational culture in Dublin, which is important because Stephen MacKenna was noted. People kind of rated the quality of conversation at these salons, and brilliance in conversation was remarked on, right? So the Great Dublin this is before 1914. Things kind of changed when World War I takes off, and this is the period that A.E. himself regarded as the golden period, several years right before 1914. The Great Dublin conversationalists were the novelist George Moore, famously holding his parties with, joined by the great wit Oliver St. John Gogarty, who is of course Buck Mulligan in Joyce's Ulysses. A.E. was another famous conversationalist, but Stephen MacKenna was really celebrated for in terms of putting the intelligibility of the one in action in dialogue and conversation. MacKenna was one of the great conversationalists. There to the right, the top right, is a portrait of James Stephens, who kind of was woven in and out of these salons and also was a great conversationalist himself. And of course, Yeats, when he wasn't in London or Paris or visiting Lady Gregory in Galway, he would weave himself in and out of this social milieu. So just a little paragraph on James Stephens and how someone new to the literary milieu in Dublin, because Stephens initially was just a clerk, is weaving in and out of these salons and then performing equally brilliantly himself before writing his great novels, such as The Crock of Gold in 1912. So a little description from Hilary Pyle. So concourse with other Dublin writers helped Stephens to a degree of sophistication in his work, which it had lacked hitherto. He would visit Seamus O'Sullivan with other young nationalists and writers on Sunday morning. So there you go. Sunday morning is taken care of. Maud Gonne was at home on Monday night. So Monday night, you go to Maud's place. Padraig Colum, that's the photograph of Colum on the bottom right. Colum had his house open on Tuesday evening. So then Tuesday evening is taken care of, right? Sarah Purser had a steady afternoon soiree, which was by invitation only, and it is unlikely that Stevens was ever there. So there's an exclusive one with Sarah Purser. On Saturday evening, Stephen MacKenna, later one of Stevens's closest friends, entertained. So Saturday night is taken care of with the great Plotinus. And then on Sunday evening, AE held open house at home in Ratgar Avenue. Okay, so just get a sense of the Irish Literary Revival was energized by all of these salons, these conversational groups, and it was feeding into poetry, into novels, into plays, into mystical prose, into translation, all happening in this energy hub around Dublin. Okay, so Stephen MacKenna. So what's really interesting about Stephen MacKenna is Ernest Debenham of the department store fame. So in 1912, Ernest Debenham read his translation of On Beauty and so he insists on subsidizing and sponsoring MacKenna's translations. What is really interesting is MacKenna tries to enlist in the Easter Rising, right? This is really interesting. And this guy was very philosophical. He was very gentle, very pacific, but he was a cultural nationalist. Patrick Pearse himself, according to one source I read, because he was very frail and had very frail health, turned back Stephen MacKenna. So this is why his great translation survives. From 1917 until 1930, over 13 years, MacKenna completes his translation, which is seen as the finest translation of any Greek classics. Now, Plotinus had been sporadically translated through the centuries, right? Remember, Porphyry puts together the Enneads in the 4th century after Plotinus dies, and it kind of bubbles along in various kinds of, has an influence in the Renaissance, it's an influence on Blake, but the translations were always very incomplete, very hard to follow, very crabbed and compressed. So MacKenna's is seen as the one that really opens it up and allows it to be accessible. So in 1923, following the death of his wife and opposing the treaty, he moves to England and dies there in 1934. Actually, what's interesting about MacKenna was, because he moves down from Bournemouth and then he ends up in Cornwall, is that he always played music. He was described as looking like a saint, like he had always circles of people who kind of naturally came to him. He seems to have been illuminated by the divine mind himself, so he is a sage in many ways. Okay, so let's look at the direct influence of MacKenna, MacKenna's Plotinus on AE. So they were friends, so they would have interacted in multiple conversational social evenings. He would have gone to AE's house, AE would have visited him, they would have had friends in common. James Stevens was a great friend of AE, who's a great friend of MacKenna. MacKenna's conversational brilliance was celebrated. So besides meeting in the many social and convivial environments in Dublin, AE closely studied particularly the 1917 Plotinus translation of MacKenna, which influenced AE's composition of his spiritual autobiographical masterpiece, The Candle of Vision. So if you look at the endnotes for The Candle of Vision, you'll see multiple references to Plotinus. So Plotinus starts to more fully enter the mystical prose of AE after his close study of the translation that Stephen MacKenna was producing. Henry Summerfield, AE's biographer, describes an event which brought great spiritual satisfaction in 1917. In this year was the publication during August of the first installment of Stephen MacKenna's graceful and lucid translation of Plotinus, a philosopher he had not previously studied in detail. Monk Gibbon, another young poet he had recently met, heard him read slowly and with great feeling from the newly issued volume. The point I want to make here is that Stephen MacKenna's translation was directly impacting AE as he was composing his great masterpiece, usually considered his finest work. Certainly his biographer Summerfield considers The Candle of Vision to be his finest work. But he would have been aware of the roots of Plotinus. He would have been a reader of Plato from when AE was a young man. So it's not like he suddenly comes across Plotinus. Also, the Neoplatonic is an influence on theosophy. So this is kind of a concentrated exposure to Plotinus, the mystical philosopher. Okay, so how can we, I'm nearly done, guys, sorry, thank you, you've been very patient. So how can we sum up Plotinus? He's so rich, but he's also a little enigmatic. MacKenna does open up Plotinus, but he is both a challenge to your concentration to follow his thought, but his thought is also trying to illuminate. So it's not so much an argument as a process of illumination. It kind of is almost like an epiphany hits you as you read certain parts of Plotinus. I like this summary here, which is connected, I think, to AE very much. So withdraw into yourself and look. And if you do not find yourself beautiful yet, act as does the creator of a statue that is to be made beautiful. He cuts away here, he smooths there, he makes this line lighter, this other purer, until a lovely face is grown upon his work. So do you also. Cut away all that is excessive, straighten all that is crooked, bring light to all that is overcast, labor to make all one glow of beauty, and never cease chiseling your statue until there shine out on you from it the godlike splendor of virtue, until you shall see the perfect goodness surely established in the stainless shrine. So this passage, argues the scholar Robert Bernard Davis, in this passage are fused all of the forces of AE's life, the complete amalgamation of the moral, the spiritual, and the artistic ideals which ruled his many-sided personality. And that's one of the great studies of AE from the 70s after Summerfield produced his biography in 1975. There was a flurry of scholarly works on AE. That's it. Okay, very good. So I'm going to, let's see, what am I going to do here? Let's see. I'm going to hit escape, I think. Yep. I'm just going to go back to the beginning. And I'm just going to do a little summary of what I've said briefly, and I'll stop. So my title is Beautiful Souls. I think there's three beautiful souls here. I think MacKenna, he was a little bit responsible himself for being not as forthright in presenting his genius. But MacKenna became a sage. AE is our great sage, in contrast to Yeats, who's the great mage. And then Plotinus was sort of like AE in having a circle of philosophers, intellectuals around him, but also in somebody who's summing up a mystical viewpoint. Okay, so let me just stop the share. Let's see. Hang on. Let's see, where am I? Okay. Oh, yeah, sorry, I had to see where I got to. Okay, so I'm going to stop the share. Okay. Thanks, everybody. And then usually what we do at this point is just kind of draw on some comments. I hope that wasn't too much of a fire hose. I was sort of debating with myself, but I did want to kind of give a sense of Plotinus coming into the Irish literary Renaissance in a very strong way through MacKenna's translation, but already being there in the sense that AE was himself already a mystical figure. Stephen MacKenna said of AE that he had the sense of the divine in himself realized, right? And so that sense of cultivate the divine in yourself and ascend back to the one is something that MacKenna saw in AE. Okay, so can I throw it open to comments? Whoever wants to jump in with a comment? Otherwise, I can call on people.
Well, E.R. Dodds was another one that you could add into the mix, you know.
That's right. Yes, E.R. Dodds, part of the Cambridge Platonists. He did the book on the Greeks and the irrational, or the irrational and the Greeks. Yeah, that whole sense of the Greek Hellenizing Irish consciousness. Yeah, Dodds is another good one there, Jim. Yeah, go ahead. All right, so let's jump to the reading. Okay, so that's like the big picture. So let's jump to the reading. Okay, so if you have some kind of a printout of the reading, so you get used to with Plotinus, the particular language. It isn't difficult. So basically, it's the nines. The Enneads means the nines from the Greek nine. And so we're looking at the tractate is the essay in the book. So from the fifth Ennead, So it's divided up into, I think it's 13, if I remember correctly. Just take a quick look at my little thing here. I think it's 13 little sections. Okay. All right, so some of these are really, really fantastic. What he tends to do, and you get used to this when you read Plotinus, is that he recapitulates his entire philosophy in each tractate. So he kind of restates it again and again and again and again. And then he goes into the experiences he's having. So this is philosophy that's also spiritual illumination. As you read Plotinus, it's supposed to have an effect on your soul, not just your mind, right? So while there's a lot of terminology we can look at in terms of the history of philosophy, the essential point of Plotinus is to help our ascent towards the one, particularly through beauty. Okay, so I'm just going to read the first 3 paragraphs, and then I'll take some comments, right? So so I'm just reading from the assigned reading. So it is a principle with us that one who has attained to the vision of the intellectual beauty and grasp the beauty of the authentic intellect will be able also to come to understand the Father and transcendent of that divine being. That's the one. So remember, there's just 3 terms. The one, the intellectual principle, or the divine mind, if you want to call it that, and then the soul, just 3, right? It concerns us then to try and to see and say for ourselves, and as far as such matters can be told, how the beauty of the divine intellect and of the intellectual cosmos may be revealed to contemplation. Fabulous. So again, emphasizing meditation, contemplation, seeing in beauty a way to go into the eternal spiritual archetype of beauty, the intelligibility of the universe, which is a way to ascend towards the source intelligibility of the one. You see that? So as you see things that are beautiful, or you articulate things that are beautiful in philosophy, art, architecture, poetry, etc., you are on the path to ascending into the beauty that is not material, the intelligible beauty that takes you on the path, right? So how can you see intelligibility? That's why you need physical buildings and poetry. You need physical materializations of the beautiful, right? Okay, so he's trying to explain this to us. So he says, let us go to the realm of magnitudes. Suppose 2 blocks of stone lying side by side. One is unpatterned, quite untouched by art. The other has been minutely wrought by the craftsman's hands into some statue of God or man, a grace or a muse, or if a human being, not a portrait, but a creation in which the sculptor's art has concentrated all loveliness. Now it must be seen that the stone thus brought under the artist's hand to the beauty of form is beautiful not as stone, for so the crude block would be as pleasant, but in virtue of the form or idea introduced by the art, right? The soul of the artist is infusing the intelligibility, access through the divine mind, to help us start the process of ascending towards the one, the source. This form is not in the material. It is in the designer, our soul, right? Before ever it enters the stone. And the artificer holds it not by his equipment of eyes and hands, but by his participation in his art. That's a crucial word. Plato says we participate in the forms. So the act of artistic creation is participating in this eternal divine intelligibility, okay? The beauty therefore exists in a far higher state in the art, for it does not come over integrally into the work. That original beauty is not transferred. What comes over is a derivative and a minor, and even that shows itself upon the statue, not integrally and with entire realization of intention, but only insofar as it has subdued the resistance of the material. Art, then, creating in the image of its own nature and content, and working by the idea or reason principle of the beautiful object it is to produce, must itself be beautiful in a far higher and purer degree, since it is the seat and source of that beauty, indwelling in the art, which must naturally be more complete than any comeliness of the external. Okay? So art is the way towards an ascent towards the divine mind through beauty into towards the one. Okay. Any comments on that? Joan, can I throw it over to you, Joan? Let's get this party started.
As you were reading that, Patrick, I kept wondering, if participation is so important, how do you participate if you're meditating?
Right. So you're going to see okay, so let's take the Platonic viewpoint, right? So the meditation is a contemplation on what is intelligibly beautiful or good, right? So when you're meditating, what you're going to look at, certainly in terms of AE, is some sense of he did a lot of retrospective meditation. So where he had come from, reviewing his life, looking back, ultimately back to previous lives, right? And so if you meditate on what is good or what is beautiful or what is true, you're meditating on that intelligibility. This is in the Platonic frame, right? Remember, we're all very Aristotelian, and that we're in a much more materialistic, scientific, analytical mode. So the meditation would be on some aspect of what is beautiful or true or good, and that meditation would allow you to either articulate that in a poem or in an essay or in a conversation, and that access to the intelligibility of what is true or good through contemplation, right, is what takes you on a journey towards, I'm not trying to use too many metaphors here, towards an ascent towards the divine mind and then into the one, right? In other words, when you talk to somebody and they say something particularly wise, true, good, beautiful, that's something that is trying to open you up to, remember that big image in Plotinus of carving the statue? It's trying to make you find the true, the good, those principles of intelligibility that allow you to, basically, for Plotinus, find your inner divinity. I mean, to put it in absolutely bald, basic, reductionistic terms, you have a divine spark or core, but you have to awaken it. And you can awaken it through the beauty in art or poetry or architecture or etc. But it's the intelligible principles that your soul awakens to and participates in that allows you to start on the ascent towards your own inner divine self, becoming not so egotistical, like the statue is carved. You also carve a sense of that spiritual soul. Now, Stephen MacKenna, in conversations with AE, saw that in AE. He saw that AE was an illuminated person. He was a sage. He was an equivalent figure to how people describe Plotinus as a sage. Okay. All right. So it's very different to our friends in the George Moore Society. Very different from George Moore. George Moore is much more of a kind of more of a trickster, right? A different kind of statue, you know. Mary, what do you think? I just get some comments from people.
Yeah, my initial, after I first read this, I thought, well, I'll have to read it a few more times, but I didn't have time. I don't know if this is a quirk of translation or just me and my upbringing, but I almost felt at the first part of it like I was reading Thomas Aquinas or something.
Right.
And then I thought, oh, it was translated by an Irishman, so maybe that had something to do with it. He only, other than a quick mention of Helen and Aphrodite, you didn't really get to the Greek gods until like the last page. And I thought, oh, that's weird. And it also struck me as, of course, a little bit abstruse, of course.
Yes. Yeah, go
you
ahead. Yeah. So Plotinus is an influence on Augustine and then an influence on Aquinas. Aquinas is also trying to integrate Aristotle. So yes, it is a little bit of an influence there too. But in and of itself, it does take a few times to read, but it is trying to help us move from just being the rational, discursive intellect into a kind of a wonder at at the intelligibility, which in the Platonic form is emanating or a copy from a divine source towards, I mean, it's a path towards our own inner illumination. You kind of have to, it's kind of like when you read AE, you go, there's a richness which is demanding, but at the same time, it's kind of simple too. There's a simplicity to it. The ultimate idea is there's unity. Behind everything, there's a unity. There's an intelligibility in the unity. And ultimately, that intelligibility has a spiritual core to try and make us awake to our own spiritual nature.
About 2/3 of the way through, I started to think, is he talking about quantum computing or something? You know?
Yes, you could possibly take it that way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Anybody else want to jump in? Raymond, what do you think?
Well, it's very rich and meaningful, and it doesn't, like the works of AE, it doesn't seem to reveal its wisdom readily. It requires effort and time, and I think maybe in the modern world, everything needs to be packaged in very short, bite-sized phrases, and uh, that's maybe where we're going wrong. We need to spend more time. And one thing that when I heard you speaking and read part of the reading was that it seems to me that AE and Plotinus are indicating that the one is there, it's eternal and available, accessible to everybody, but the one doesn't seem to be making any great push to attract the souls, all the many souls here on this planet, and it seems to me that maybe that is what we have to do. I think we get it that the physical is entering the ground again, but there's something else there, and it 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 maybe is rejoining this oneness, but I don't get the impression that, and just to say that when Mary was talking about Aquinas and Augustine, that Christianity has drawn a lot from these ancient Greek philosophers also. So they're some of the thoughts that have occurred to me that maybe nowadays we're sitting waiting for a Messiah or a messenger from an emissary from the oneness to come and save us all, but we're not prepared to do a whole pile ourselves.
Yeah, very good. Very good point. The difference between theosophical esoteric writing, which is obviously a huge influence on AE with Blavatsky, is it is very much based on striving, and that you're supposed to engage in meditation, visualization. You're supposed to, you're supposed to cultivate. It's what John Eglinton calls Protestant theosophy, in the sense that you're supposed to, it's almost like a work ethic in the esoteric mystical. I mean, Plotinus would say that we're all, because Plotinus would meet all the time for decades in Rome. He had a circle around him, and that he expects people to be constantly reading the Platonic dialogues, the works of Aristotle, the Stoics, and then he's commenting. So the Enneads are his seminar notes commenting on a very long, remember for him, it's ancient philosophy, a very long immersion in decades upon decades on a spiritual articulation of the intelligibility of our consciousness towards ascending us towards a unity an ecstatic union with the one. Now, Plotinus, in his biography by Porphyry says that he had that ecstatic union several times. And if you have the handout, I'm just going to read one little place where I think it's clear that some kind of ecstatic union is happening. And this is also something that A.E. experienced in his youth, as the Candle of Vision points out. So in section 11, if you have the book with you, section 11, so he says, I'm just going to read a couple of short paragraphs. Similarly, anyone unable to see himself but possessed by that God has but to bring that divine within before his consciousness. And at once he sees an image of himself lifted to a better beauty. Now let him ignore that image, lovely though it is, and sink into a perfect self-identity. No such separation remaining. At once he forms a multiple unity with the God silently present. So this is the unification. In the degree of his power and will, and the two become one. Should he turn back to the former duality, still he is pure and remains very near to the God. He has but to look again, and the same presence is there. This conversion brings gain. At the first stage, that of separation, a man is aware of self, but retreating inwards, he becomes possessor of all, puts sense away behind him in dread of the separated life, and becomes one in the divine, right? So that's the message of Plotinus, right? And again, he repeats this in the different tractates across the Enneads. He recircle, it's recursive. He's going round and round and round, right? And that sense of contemplation of the divine within can lead to an ecstatic, joyful reunion through the intelligibility of the divine mind, contemplating beauty in philosophy, beauty in literature, can lead to a sense of God coming into consciousness, right? Anybody else want to jump in? Patrick, what do you think? The cooperative
Well, I
side.
do have a thought, but I see Marty has his hand up there.
Marty, sorry. I'm not just jumping around. I don't see everybody. Go ahead, Marty. Yep.
Hello, thank you. That was a great talk. I get in late from seeing my daughter, so I only get up to about part 5. But
Okay.
as a practicing poet, I think this would be called finding your voice.
Right.
But I see what MacKenna and A were doing as part of a Celtic revival, and I have a couple of poets involved in Belfast here writing towards something similar. But certainly to join with the divine, I have a different name for it in my head, but I think it's a wonderful text, and I'll be printing it out in the morning and reading it all. Sorry, I didn't get a chance to read it all.
Yeah, just in terms of the impact, Marty, on that, the impact of Plotinus is very important for literary revivals, not just Irish ones. So Plotinus, as he's discovered by the Renaissance, he's going to have a sense of just the artists and the writers will have their oration on the divinity of man is one of the things in the Renaissance. In the German Romantics, particularly Friedrich Schiller writes about the beautiful soul. The goal is to have a beautiful soul. That's because he's studying Plotinus. Yeah. So Schiller's plays and poetry, and Goethe, his great colleague, the other great German who writes Faust, they're talking about how the soul should find its deeper mystical divinity. So it's not just in the Irish literary Renaissance, the spiritual intelligence unfolds that Eglinton talks about in the 1880s that then unfolds. So we get like Nobel laureates, Yeats winning it in in the 1920s.
And then T.S. Eliot, Marty would be delighted to know T.S. Eliot was heavily influenced by Eeyore. Eeyore Dowds, by the way, is from Bombridge.
Right.
Yeah, so he was a big influence on T.S. Eliot. T.S. Eliot, of course, a lot of his poetry was influenced by Neoplatonism, and Still Point, Eliot's famous phrase, at the still point there, the dance is from, which captures the Neoplatonian idea of timelessness. And so a lot of it, really, we think now about mindfulness, and it's about consciousness, really, Platonism, really. It's about consciousness, and you'll see that in T.S. Eliot's work as well, so not only is it important for the different people we've mentioned there, Edward Dawes and Stephen MacKenna and A. Russell, but as I say, T.A. big influence on T.S. Eliot as well. And by the way, Marty, if you come down to learn sometime, Marty, I'll give you a wee bit of an A. Russell tour.
Oh, I'd love to. Oh, thank you very much, Jim.
You'll never be the same. You're going to be meeting the one.
Yeah.
Have Jimmy's tour. Anybody else? Yeah. Patrick, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just so I haven't had a chance to read it, but I'm looking forward to reading it again. But I was thinking when you were reading the extract before, and thanks for a wonderful talk. I was thinking of, and I was just wondering to what extent maybe these people are, well, A.E. McKenna. It seems reminiscent of someone like John Ruskin as well. I was thinking of the 19th century art historian. Yeah, but then the other thing is like 1917 is when this translation begins being rolled out, and this search for oneness. I mean, Ruskin is kind of searching for a difference to like the vagaries of industrial capitalism and how that is, how it's kind of tearing the fabric of society apart. Like this is the middle of World War One. Like the world is on the rack essentially. So this search for oneness. I don't know. This is me as a crude historian. I'm thinking about this sense that people are very damaged at this point. People are going through. The world is completely, yeah, well, it's on the rack, as I say. So this search for oneness. I mean, I guess this feels like it's part of a much wider pattern. That's, you know, that it's not just a Celtic revival. It's not just islands, state building. It's not just. It's this kind of whole idea of social reconstruction that people are thinking about in a very real sense from 1917 onwards, I guess. Just wondering how much.
The labor movement is getting rolling with Shaw. Shaw's influence is through Henry Bergson. Bergson, the French philosopher, would have been a student of Plotinus. The other thing that's interesting is Sir Ernest Debenham of Debenham. So the capitalist class, very wealthy, he was very fascinated, and so Debenham deserves further investigation because he kept McKenna funded and kept him on a kind of a timeline to keep this going. Because McKenna was suffered from ill health. His wife died in 1923. He had a lot of different distractions. But Debenham is another figure. And I have a feeling, though I don't know much about Debenham yet, but I have a feeling that Debenham may be one of these English sages to complement these Irish sages. Anyway, next time you're in Debenhams, look for the one.
I used to work in Debenhams. Jesus, I'm repressing all that.
That's fantastic. Did you know this guy could have been a mystical philosopher? It's intriguing. Anybody else want to jump in? I'm conscious of the time. Do you mind if I call on people? Yeah, go ahead, Hugh. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, not very much to offer tonight, other than the fact that I read a few of the bits. But what I think about somebody like Stephen MacKenna is I don't know what he did other than this translation, for which he's obviously remembered. But perhaps there are many people like him in literary history, translators who have been forgotten and should be given more recognition. That's just a thought. That's all I have to say.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, absolutely. Jim and Michael and Lurgan, if they get their A. Russell Cultural Center, there should be some kind of acknowledgement of. I don't know if you guys can see the book. This is if you are interested, the Penguin Classics. It's the whole enchilada is absolutely fantastic, though. You never regret engaging with Plotinus. He's great.
Could I just thank you very much for introducing me to him, Patrick. I struggled so much in college with Plato and fell in love with Aristotle many years later. But could I just say, in my reading, this man Plotinus solved for me, at least I want to go back and read it again, the mystery of creation. I found that very interesting, the passages on creation and don't worry, it's sorted for you. Maybe I should go and read the Bible more, but I just felt very joyful reading those passages.
Yeah, so in terms of like religious speculation, and there is always a danger when we talk about anything to do with religion that it becomes a bit of a philosophical roundabout and we go round and round. But just in terms of the model from Plotinus, it's an immaterial spiritual realm that things emanate down. The lowest form of the emanation is the material world we're all in. And so we're the midpoint between the spirit. We as human beings, our culture, our intelligence, we're the midpoint between the material and the spiritual. So That's why as we create, we tend to emphasize much more the material today, economics, politics, that's what we talk about. But for Plotinus, it's the emanation of a divine source, the one, which our intelligibility through art, conversation, meditation, contemplation can awaken an ascent towards the God within. So it's a philosophical idea. I think it's really cool because it is one of these energizing seed beds in any kind of cultural renaissance or cultural community, because it's not dogmatic to any particular.
Probably explains why AE, when he was down, he gave everything away and didn't want to be,
Absolutely, yes.
you
And actually, Stephen MacKenna was like that, Jim.
yeah,
Stephen MacKenna just went down. He moves into smaller and smaller. He ends up in a little laborer's cottage in Cornwall, which was
yeah.
filled with musical instruments. He used to play the accordion, and he had statues of Buddha, though he wasn't a Buddhist. He was a Christian Platonist, and he didn't like the institutional Catholic Church in Ireland, though initially he tried to
Yeah.
be. So he
I like
kind
the
of did that.
contrast with Seamus Heaney. Heaney filled a big van of all his stuff and brought it up to
Yeah, yeah.
so as he'd be remembered. Whereas he burnt everything he had, so as he'd be forgotten. And unfortunately for us, it was somewhat successful. That he was forgotten a lot. And
And just to say, another passage that I enjoyed very much was the beauty of wisdom. Plotinus compared, who is ugly, that's not important, physically ugly. It's the wisdom of the person that is more important than physical beauty. I just noticed that on another little anecdote there.
There's hope for all of us, Hugh. There's hope for all of us. Yeah. Go ahead, Mary. You want to say something, Mary? Mary McKenna? Seems we're talking about your namesake.
Oh, well, not really. I don't have the text, but it reminds me that this was a lived tradition, and philosophy wasn't about just dry treatises and, oh, there, I've got it, it's nailed down. So the whole tradition of Platonism was a lived tradition, and these people then saw it like that too, even though they were hundreds of years after Plato and Socrates. And so the immortality of the soul. And so if you go to a lot of academic philosophy now in universities, people would be stunned if you said this to them. How does it shape your life and so on? So it's just to be reminded of that. So I look forward to picking up on the text and being,
Yeah, that's a great point, Mary. I'll just comment further on that. The usual way philosophy is delivered is a lecture by somebody gives you a lecture about Plato, and I did philosophy in university, and so you just kind of take notes and then you go away. That's not how Plotinus or AE or Stephen MacKenna or the Dublin Literary Renaissance or any of the earlier Renaissance periods, whereas the German Romantics in the 18th century or the Renaissance cultures, it's salons, it's conversation. Like you said, it's lived, it's discussed, it's lived, it's unfolded. I mean, this is a lifelong pursuit to try to meditate on how the intelligibility of some spiritual truth is helping you carve your statue, helping you understand spiritual truth, consciousness. It's not an argument. It's not an argument like, okay, it is this. It's an unfolding of a way of being. And that way of being, AE was doing already through theosophy and the Hermetic studies and his wide reading in Eastern wisdom. So Plotinus kind of fits in for him in a mature state. Maggie, you got anything you want to jump in? Just calling
No,
people.
I'm as you can imagine, I'm dipping my toe into this whole world for the first time, and congratulations, Patrick, you made it very accessible. I have questions, but I'm not confident enough to ask them. But if this happens again, and I'd love to come along and expand my knowledge. It's very, very, very interesting indeed. I tell you one thing that occurred to me about the beauty thing. Is there an element of subjectivity in that? And who decides beauty? Is that a really dumb question, guys? Sorry.
No. I mean, for the ancients, there would have been a sense of wholeness, harmony, and radiance. And so
Yeah.
remember, the core idea of the one is unity.
Yeah.
So the coherent and unified elements are allowing a radiant wholeness to be manifest. And so for them, subjectivity and objectivity, that's a product of the Enlightenment. That's
Okay.
Voltaire saying, I don't like Homer's Iliad, which was shocking. So
Okay, so it's not
that's
relevant, Patrick,
no,
then.
it's not that it's not relevant. It's like that's kind of how we break up uh the lived experience. We just say, well, you think it's this and I think it's that, and then we just go off in our
Oh,
little
okay. Okay.
fragments of subjectivity. So that fragmentation is post-Enlightenment, post-18th century.
Okay.
That's not the third century Neoplatonic. Their sense is things are unified. And remember, he systematized Plato, Aristotle, and the Stoics in the Enneads. So it's a great unification. And beauty is not, for the Plotinus tradition, is not, well, you think it's beautiful and I don't think it's beautiful. It's like, to them, they would say that that is trivializing it.
Okay.
Which is what's happened to us today. We're post-Enlightenment, right?
Okay. Well, you can see I have a lot of homework to do.
No, Plotinus
But
is both simple and,
yeah,
demanding.
yeah.
Okay, we'll just take a couple more minutes. Clive, you want to jump in? Clive, you're new to our talks. We'll do 5 more minutes, guys, and I'll let you go. Can't hear you, Clive.
I don't know. I seem to be gone.
No, there you are. You're back. Go
Am I
ahead.
there?
Yeah.
As Maggie was saying there, this is a total new avenue of experience for me. I had never heard in my ignorance of Plotinus, but I am certainly looking forward enormously to exploring this whole thing. I don't want to go down the side roads, but spiritually, I attend the Universal Unitarian Church, which has a vastly different outlook on Christianity than the majority of the main churches has. Thank God. And this is a whole new way of looking and exploring and looking at the idea of the one. Is it all the one? Now, taking into consideration the fact that we know an awful lot more about the size, the dimensions, and the physics of the universe than poor Plotinus could ever have imagined. He had no conception of what we know about it nowadays. But I don't think that would alter in the slightest the search of the soul going on for, is there something greater? Is there something outside of me that is greater than me that I should be wanting to be part of? Patrick, I will be tuning in for every episode, and I'm going to start looking for Plotinus' writings. Thank you.
The Penguin Classics, I think I showed it to you guys, the Ennead.
Yeah.
It's only a few euros on Amazon. It's well worth it. It's got a great introduction about Stephen MacKenna, which is delightful. Thanks, Clive. Great to see you, Clive. Marianne,
Thank you, Patrick.
You want to wrap us up?
Hi, Patrick. Thanks again for the talk. It was fantastic, and yeah, made it all very accessible. I'm not familiar with Plotinus or Stephen MacKenna, but I'm certainly intrigued to find out more after this meeting. So, yeah, that's all I have to say. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Marianne. Rita, can I ask, is Rita still there? Maybe Rita's gone. Okay. Joan, you want to just wrap this up with maybe a final comment? Since we're out here in the cold Midwest.
Well, I was inspired by Clive's use of avenues and roads that we're taking, because it seemed like we were given an invitation. Let us go, he says in that second paragraph that you read. And then when you get to the end of our reading, he's aware that maybe we're confused, and I'm certainly confused. But then he says, maybe we should make yet another attempt by another road. So I look forward to these roads opening, unfolding, And there are other byways we will go on. So
All
I
right.
look forward to joining all of you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm just going to check the chat, make sure I haven't missed anything. Yeah, we are recording this, so it should be, as Marianne said, it should be on a channel. All right, so I will, I should give you a little bit of Plotinus. So the conclusion of this particular tractate or treatise, remember there's 6 books, and they're each in 9 treatises. That's why the Nines is the name of the Enneads. He says, we ourselves possess beauty when we are true to our own being. Isn't that great? Our ugliness is in going over to another order. Our self-knowledge, that is to say, is our beauty. In self-ignorance, we are ugly. So we ourselves possess beauty when we are true to our own being, okay? And certainly that is the case with AE. He exemplifies that. All right, thanks, everybody. I'm going to let you all go. Thanks a lot. Take care.
Thanks a million, Patrick.
May the one go with you.
Thank you.